Mark Murphy, great to see you. How's your year going? What are you doing in the dead of winter? Are you weight training and all that stuff as you get ready? What are the kids? What are your kids doing right now?
Yeah. So at Kalamazoo College, we are on the quarter system. So our students are all at home. They take finals actually right before Thanksgiving. So they're all at home
Oh, that's
until
nice.
January.
So
Yeah.
what's
So,
that? Where's that put you? What are you doing this time of year when they're gone?
yeah. So it gives us an opportunity to focus a lot on recruiting, kind of finishing up next year's class. Um, in Division III, and particularly this year, with the FAFSA in its changes and its timeline changes, that's really impacted, I think, families' decisions on college. It's going to postpone a lot of things for a lot of people. So I've got, at our level, we recruit a lot of multi-sport athletes. I got basketball games to go watch for our tennis players, and that kind of stuff. So that's cool. It's keeping us busy right now.
Good. Walk me through the changes with the FAFSA. I've been doing research and helping my clients with it, but I want to hear your perspective. What is
Well,
what is the change? Why do you think they did the change? And what should families be considering if they've got a high school kid over the next couple of years that wants to go to college?
yeah. Well, conceptually, it's going to do the same thing as it's done before, which is it's the government's estimator, or I suppose it's a little bit more than an estimate. It's they're judging, or they're gauging what a family's ability to pay for college is. What I understand is that they've tried to make it easier. Historically, the FAFSA has been can be tricky to fill out for some folks. Not everybody's financial situation is the same, right? Everybody's different. So
Right.
I think they've tried to make it more universal and to hopefully be more accurate. The biggest challenge with the FAFSA is it's not available yet. Historically, families have been able to access the FAFSA, I think, in the beginning of September, maybe even August, and start filling that out.
Right.
And it's still
And,
not
and
available to
and they
families.
made that change about 10 years ago so families could know what their financial situation was before they applied and or while they were applying. So
Yeah, I mean,
why did they go back to after the first of the year?
well, I think this is an anomaly. I think
It
because
is.
of the
Okay.
changes, I think the timeline this year has been impacted by their changes. I don't have any reason to believe that we won't go back to that timeline in the future.
Right.
I expect next fall to be like last fall or previous falls, where families will be able to access that form and get that filled out earlier in the fall. I just think they're rolling out a lot of different changes, and maybe some of their background process is different. I'm not sure. And so it's later this year.
They needed more time because of the changes this year.
I guess so. It's a government situation, so
Sure.
there's more they have to get done, and in the end, I think we'll have the same idea. The same parents will have will be, they'll have they're calling it different. It used to be, I know there's some webinars that are floating around out there, but the ability to pay is they're using a different acronym now going forward. But ideally it's going to do the same thing. And what that information does, most importantly, is it influences, or it's information that the colleges are using to then put together financial aid packages for prospective students and their families.
Okay.
And an institution like ours, we won't be able to put those packages together until families fill it out, and then we get that data back from FAFSA. So we're looking at probably the end of January, maybe even February, before those packages from our institution will be able to go out. So yeah, so
That's
we'll see
rough.
what happens. A lot of holding patterns going on right now.
Yeah. That was the really great thing about that change to October 1st that happened way back
Mm-hmm.
is that, not only do families have more time to make decisions knowing what the money situation is going to be, but your financial aid staff isn't getting bombarded on February trying to make 1,000 decisions in 3 months or 3 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, it's this year is definitely a kink in the chain for sure. I think we're definitely trying to make the changes that we can, and that we have to on our end. And we'll be ready hopefully for the data to come as soon as it's available from FAFSA. And I also expect they'll continue to use prior year FAFSA. So you can use data from the previous tax year than the current tax year, because most people aren't doing their taxes in the fall.
Right.
They're not doing them for that year until the next year. So
Right.
again, it's just another thing that we're all having to deal with, but it definitely has an impact this year.
Good. Thanks for explaining that a little bit. That helps me understand what's going on a little bit better too. For those of you that are listening, Mark did a great job. Mark closed out my book for me and wrote a great piece on making a final decision for colleges, and I really appreciated it, and it was really well done. You did a great job. So I want to talk a little bit of recruiting with you. I'm talking to a lot of college coaches in different sports, and I'm always intrigued with the recruit board. When do you recruit? What does your board look like? How do you evaluate? How do you make decisions on who you're going to put time into, who's going to be at that top of the board, who you're going to make an offer to? So I want to pick your brain about that. What are your strategies? What are your philosophies? How do you organize it?
Yeah. Let's see where to begin. Philosophy wise, this will be my 15th year at Kalamazoo. It's probably changed, maybe evolved over the years.
Sure.
Definitely when I first got to Kalamazoo, I was probably looking for the most talented players that I could find. And I think that that experience was valuable mainly because I learned that it's never that simple. A longtime coach here at Kalamazoo told me right away when I got here, you don't often get the players you want, but you have to coach the players you get.
Right.
And no truer words could ever be spoken. And it doesn't matter what level you are at. So I have gone to more of a recruiting strategy of looking for three things when I recruit. Academically, is it a good fit? Kalamazoo is a pretty rigorous academic experience. I don't want to try to talk a kid in or talk a family into a situation where I know deep down academically this is not the right choice and it's going to be a real struggle for everyone.
Right.
That's my first criteria. The second is, do you like tennis? You'd be surprised at how many junior kids just don't really want to play a sport anymore, whether it be tennis or basketball or whatever. They've chased points, trying to get their rankings up over the years, trying to get more exposure, and they're just burned out. And the third thing I look for is, do they like to compete? You can do a lot with a kid that wants to compete, that likes competition, and is hungry. And those are the criteria over the last, I'd say, 5 to 7 years that I've really kind of focused on. Talent is, of course, icing on the cake. A really talented kid that meets those criteria, those are always the sort of the diamonds in the rough. But I focus more on the aspect of I can do a lot with those three things. We're definitely a developmental program, and that's kind of the niche that I've sort of gone to, and I think that's worked pretty well for us. We're having a lot more kids and families being interested in us ahead of time. That makes recruiting. You can ask any coach. When LeBron James gives you a phone call, that's a pretty good phone call to take. So that's making life a little bit easier as well.
Nice. That's fantastic. Those are three great pillars. And if any young coaches out there are starting a college program right now and getting into college ranks as assistant or head coach, it doesn't matter what sport you play. Those three pillars are going to take you a long way. You just replace, do they like tennis with whatever your sport is, right?
Yeah.
That's great. How early are you recruiting? Will you look at a freshman? Will you put a freshman on your board if you see somebody with some talent and you like their attitude and you like how they work?
Yeah. I mean, I look at, I don't want to say eighth graders, but kids that are a good fit. I mean, one of the issues you have with young talented players, eighth, ninth grade, is they've got a lot of high school to go. Academically, where I'm at, there's obviously a certain threshold of student that we're looking for. So, but definitely early on, I'm looking at ninth graders, recruiting women's tennis players. They're often playing up in age groups as juniors. So you might have a 13-year-old playing in 16-year-old division, so then you come to find out, oh geez, they're only 13, they're still in 8th grade, so but
Right.
they go on the list, and they start receiving information from us, and we can just kind of see where it takes us. Obviously, I would say the students are more activated at looking at colleges as they get older.
Right.
Families though, they like to know that their kid has some special talents, and they like to be recognized early on. And I don't have a problem with sending a letter or an email and just be like, hey, let us know where you're playing next, and we'll keep an eye out and that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
Our recruiting is obviously we spend the most time with juniors and seniors. We try to get juniors in for visits the end of their junior year on campus. We try to get them on campus as early as possible.
Nice.
And I think having the students kind of be on campus, and it's changed. I mean, it's changed over the years. Overnight visits aren't as important as they used to be. Matter of fact, I haven't had a recruit that's enrolled and is part of our program do an overnight visit in years. Now, COVID had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, COVID made a big change in that.
But having the students and the families on campus to sort of see how a day in the life is for a student, I think that really makes that's an important step for any regular student or a student athlete. I think that's a really important thing. And so we try to get them on campus that junior year, spring, and just continue the process, try to ramp up, and go from there.
How much weight do you put into your present players' opinion of the kids that come visit?
Ooh, good question. Some.
So if one of your number one, your number two comes to you and says, Coach, I'm not sure they're a good fit for us. They were real quiet or real shy, or they didn't really feel like they were buying into us, or does that affect you?
The feedback is received. I'll tell you from personal experience. I mean, from experience, they're generally not always right. Particularly with women, I would say.
Right.
They change. I can think of a woman that came on a visit, ended up enrolling at K, was very quiet, very shy, by the time she graduated from K, I mean, she was a totally different animal. I mean, it was, she was confident and loud and was a captain. And so I listen, I think there's always, I think feedback is great.
It's the type of feedback you're listening for.
Yeah. And I think, as you get to know recruits, right, you get to know their families, you get to know them. Right. We're talking hours, double-digit hours of time, whether it be on the phone or in person or whatever. And, you have a 30-minute lunch that, one of your current players had with this, this said student athlete recruit. And, it's a different, you get a pretty good feel. But I think just to take that a step further, I think you do need to know what your current situation is, right? You have to have an idea of the environment that your team has, right? And okay, am I going to bring in this alpha, into this team of betas? Right. Who's going to survive? So I definitely think in recruiting, having a good idea, or having a sense at least of what environment you have now, excuse me, with your team and what you're bringing in is important and should sort of be a factor in what you're looking for. Now, what I try to do is to try to have a consistent environment, right? So it's kind of, it's a cycle, right? It sort of perpetuates itself. As long as you can kind of start getting things in the right place, in the right order, you don't have to worry so much about bringing in that alpha, or, somebody that might upset the apple cart, once you kind of get it established and everybody understands what's going on.
I love it. I'm intrigued, I'm always intrigued when you and I talk, because I'm a team sport coach, and your sport is more individualized. And I want to find out, you see it that way? Because for me, on a basketball team, I want 3 or 4 alphas, because I need guys that can take big shots, can handle that pressure at the end of the year. And then I want a couple of guys that have maybe that were alphas in high school that aren't ready to be that alpha again. But when those 3 or 4 graduate, they need to step into that role. Do you find that with the individualized sport like tennis where you want that same dynamic, or is it more about that individual?
Well, the way the way college tennis is played is yes, tennis is an individual sport, but it's played in a team setting. So I can have the best player in the country, but if we lose every match 6 or 8-1, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
So um, you learn quickly who has it,
Right.
who's gonna make that tough second serve in a really difficult spot. The teams that are the best in the country have a full lineup of those kinds of players. Um, so you could call them alphas in a way. But I also think the way people compete, there's some people can be alphas when they compete. They can make that last shot. They can, do whatever it is, whatever the situation calls for. And then when they're together on the bus or, at lunch or dinner or whatever in the hotel traveling, they're just like, their personality is a little bit maybe more reined in.
Yes.
And that's obviously what you're trying to find is those folks that when they start competing, they have a special skill set. I mean, one of the best players I ever coached, male or female, was here at Kalamazoo, and she was probably arguably the best competitor I've ever coached. You couldn't pick her out of a line of but I mean, she lost 10 matches in 4 years for us, and
Wow.
was a 4-time All-American, and
Yeah.
it wasn't always about skill. It was just about it,
Yeah.
and that is a special skill. There's no question.
I'm always interested, my wife and I were huge women's tennis fans. We watch a ton of women's tennis, and we kind of forget the men's side, and it's easy to do in the United States. We really don't have that. We haven't had that dominant male player in such a long time. But I have a daughter, and I know you have a daughter. I've been really intrigued with the Naomi Osaka
Mhm.
history and what she's had to go through, emotionally and professionally. You're a male coaching women.
Mhm.
How do you approach your team when it comes to their emotions? That obviously tennis plays a big role, but the world around them is affecting that. How do you coach? How do you lead? How do you prepare? How do what's it like to build a relationship with these kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think my experience is pretty exclusively with tennis, so I can't speak to other sports. But um, I think a lot has changed in the last 10 years when it comes to regards to mental health.
Yeah.
I think when you and I were kids, we called it mental toughness.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
it was things were seen differently and treated differently. Um, I would say, again, speaking of myself, it just comes down to communication. I'm chatty. We do one-on-ones during the year every week with each individual, so I have an idea of what's going on with them. And you have to communicate. And so much of what they do has actually very little to do with tennis. You know, classes can be hard, relationships are hard, families are hard. I mean, there's a lot that's difficult. Now, fortunately, none of my kids are on the cover of Sports Illustrated or on
Right.
ESPN at 6 o'clock, but they still have a lot of the same similar challenges. So it's really about communicating and trying to get them to open up. Lots of institutions, myself, our institution included, they have a lot of resources, just internally. We have our own counseling center on campus. So anytime we have any challenges that we feel like we can't deal with internally within our program, we'll refer them there, and if they can't deal with it, they'll send them outside of the college for more help or whatever. And I think it's just trying to talk and communicate about how people are feeling.
Yeah.
um and it has to be a daily thing. It has to be something that we make sure we're all doing okay. And it goes both ways too. I mean, there've been days where I've told the team, not one of my best days. I'm just letting you know now, maybe X, Y, or Z, so I try to be honest with them, just as like, I hope they can be honest with me.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I'm having one of those days. We're going to have that talk with my team at practice today. So I appreciate that more than you know. I want to go back. I'm going to kind of correlate the two things we've talked about, recruiting and mental health. What I loved about what you wrote at the end of my book is, I'm so detail oriented. I really downloaded my history of recruiting and how to recruit. So families had a very clear process. But what I love about you, the way you finished my book, was your line was find a happy place.
Right.
For me, it was like, I wrote 45,000 words, and it was your 4 words for me was the cherry on top of it all. It was just like, oh, it was like, thank you, Mark. I couldn't have found those. I couldn't have come up with those words any better than you did. So going back to mental health and how we coach and how we teach and how we recruit, how important is it that families make that their number one priority, to make sure they're not worried about the coach and the program and the ACTSCT and the financial aid? At the end of the day, it all starts with that happy place. Am I wrong there?
Well, I did say that. So I believe it. I also think it's also a very simple statement, right? I mean, it's very easy to, one day you're happy, the next day you're not. So I think I also understand that college athletics has changed dramatically. I mean, what's happening with revenue sports at Division I is bananas, and so, I think ultimately in an ideal world, that's what families should be looking for, is the institution that they and their son or daughter feels like they see themselves at, not only as an athlete, but as a student. They feel like it has the support structure around them in case there are any challenges. For instance, we're in the middle of Michigan. If I recruit a student from California, this isn't California, I mean, we got snow here, so like,
well, I mean, that's that beach right down the road.
We do have a beach, but it's not the Pacific Ocean. So, so it's, those types of things I think all need to be considered. Yes. The information is there, right? And there's so much information out there today, whether it's the internet, whether it's visiting, whether it's both, talking to people. And you'll get a sense meeting coaches and talking to coach. I think I said too, it's even after you commit, don't just end there. I mean, continue to see, how the coach interacts with you, the players interact with you, try to see contests, see how things go. I think one thing that gets lost a lot of times with families is they don't go and watch the team compete enough, or even practice.
So right. Yes. That's so important.
I think as a coach, we can sit down and we can tell you whatever you want to hear, I mean, that's the sad truth of it. Right. But I think, when you're coaching, and you're not coaching for show, but you're actually in the moment, you're coaching your team or your player. That's really truly who you are. And I think the perspectives the families, they need to see that coach. And I think once, and there's not always just one happy place, there can be lots of places that meet the criteria, but in order, I think, for a student athlete to be successful, they need to find that happy place or a happy place for them. And I think they'll thrive if they can find it.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why it's so important that you go visit 3, 4, 5 schools, step on that campus. And does it fit you? How do you feel? How did it make you feel? How did you feel around the people? How did the environment feel? And that's why I always tell kids, you don't want to go visit Kalamazoo in December when all the kids are home.
It's not ideal.
It's not ideal. Go back in mid-January when they come back. Go back in March and April, but go back when it's cold too. Especially if you're going to visit from California, go visit in January. Can you handle that -10 that you're going to have for 3 straight weeks? Right. I mean? So I think that's great advice. I love it. You and I bonded almost 30 years ago over our Cubbies.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're both lifelong Cub fans, unfortunately. We got our one 7 years ago. And,
that's right.
And are you finding that you're still riding that World Series, or are you starting to find you're starting to get frustrated again?
I think as as a mostly lifelong Chicago sports fan,
Yeah.
I'm a Bears fan by also. So,
Yes, me too.
the 85 Bears, it doesn't go away. I mean,
No,
it's, the 16 Cubs. I mean, they're just, we won't forget, right?
right.
Because of so many years. And, for the Bears, since then, it's really been pretty meek. I think the thing is, for me as a professional sports fan, I just want to have a chance every year,
Yes.
So what Theo did and now what Jed is doing, I mean, the fact that the Cubs are maybe even in on Ohtani is, for me, I'm grateful for that. I don't know if we'll get him, but I'm not sure we should get him. I mean, you talk about ransoming the future, but
Yes.
um, like last year, I think was a surprise. The move for council is we did it to Renteria
Yeah,
when we got Madden.
you
So I
sure
mean, we kind
did.
of did the same thing. So the result paid off the first time, and I think the consensus is, Craig Counsell's a great manager. He's probably worth 5 or 6 wins a year alone. So
Yeah.
I think Rossi did a nice job for us. But I'm optimistic. But 16 was a great year. I think the hardest part about that was just watching all those guys go.
Yeah.
I
It was
mean,
hard.
with Rizzo, I mean, Baez,
Schwarber.
yeah. And ironically, I don't remember exactly the order. I think Schwarber was the first one to go,
Yeah.
and he's probably had the best run since then.
Yeah.
Of those guys. I mean, Rizzo's been solid. I mean, he's what he is, but
Yeah.
Baez is just no. Baez is over here in Detroit. Um,
He's been a train wreck.
yeah, I mean, he's yeah. I think the reason why it worked for us in Chicago is he had a lot of structure. He had a lot of he
Good.
had a lot of good stuff around him. Not that he's in trouble, but I think he was more stabilized as a player, offensively and defensively. But yeah, that's the way it goes. But I'm excited. We'll see what happens. I mean, Jed's got a plan. See if he can put it together.
If you are Jed right now in the hot stove season, and you can drop 60 million a year on Ohtani, or you can go get a Bellinger, a Hader, get a closer, and get a number one starter, and bring up, let your young kids come up and play. What do you do? Where do you spend that 60 million?
It's a tough call. I mean, if you told me Bellinger and X, Y, and Z, I'd probably go that route.
Yeah.
Especially with Ohtani not pitching for a year.
Right.
And it's not always a given that they come, the athlete can come back and be at the same type of level. What I also, I think the big factor for me with the Cubs and Ohtani is I'm actually really kind of surprised they're in on it, and it might be soft. It might just be talk. Is there something bigger or larger at play? I mean, are the Cubs and the Ricketts, do they want Ohtani for other reasons than winning baseball games?
Of course.
Maybe they do.
Yeah, of course.
So
yeah,
for them, it may be worth it. There's no real salary cap in baseball. So I guess they can probably do more. And with the network and the advancements they've made around Wrigley, they obviously have more bandwidth than they've ever had before on spending. So,
right.
But it's, at the end of the day, it's like, do you have those guys, right? I mean, like we talked earlier, I mean, you got to have the alphas, and do they have the alphas in the pitching staff, and do they have the alphas when it's, bottom of the ninth and we're down 2 and the bases are loaded with 2 outs? So
yeah,
that's sports right there.
I just feel like we've got into this routine where we just keep dragging our young guys around instead of letting them come up and find their way. And then then they burn out because we keep bouncing them back and forth.
Yeah, I think was it surprised to see Mervitz not do well?
Me too.
I mean, he was all spring last year, winter actually, fall, winter. I mean, fall ball, winter.
Yeah.
This guy's the future. He's a masher. He goes to the World Baseball Classic, does pretty well. He came up, struggled. Is he alive? I don't even know. We haven't heard from him since.
Right. Yeah. There
wasn't a call up.
I'm hearing that he's a piece for potentially bringing Tyler Glass down to Chicago.
I mean, I guess, sure. I agree with you. I think we grew up in a world where Jerome Walton and Dwight Smith came up to the system and immediately helped the Cubs.
Yeah.
And were rookies of the year, 1 and 2 rookie of the year, and you sprinkle in the veterans, and that's how you build a baseball team. I don't know if that's really what's happening anymore. It's more of you get a guy like Mervitz, or I wouldn't be surprised if Pete Crow Armstrong is traded for an arm.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, if Blake Snell is really on the market, or something like that, I mean, who knows, right?
Who
And
knows?
I don't think the professional sports teams, baseball in particular, covet the high rate, the highly drafted prospect like maybe some of the other sports.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna get back to current season.
Okay.
Are you a Justin Fields guy?
I think I am. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I am too. Do you keep the coaching staff, or do you keep the quarterback, or do you keep both? You
Well,
got
I
a
think the
number one
problem with
draft pick. What do you do?
I think the problem with the Bears is if they've done everything backwards,
Yeah.
right? So previous regime drafted Fields, and it was a good. I have no problem with what Pace did there. I mean, I think that was to get Fields at what 10. No
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
So then they hire a coach, then they hire a GM, and then they hire a president of football operations, Kevin Warren. So I think it's difficult. I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin Warren cleans house. I'm not sure he'll keep Ryan Poles, because that's why you hired a guy like that. And I don't think he comes to Chicago from the Big Ten, even though the Big Ten had plenty of issues coming its way. I don't think he leaves the Big Ten for a job he's just going to sit and not do anything. So, the next, what do we got? 5-6 games left. Detroit did something very similar last year. Kind of a terrible beginning, first half of the season. Dan Campbell was, hammered everywhere in the media.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they started winning games.
Yeah.
And they finished the year strong. They beat Green Bay to keep them out of the playoffs, and they're doing what they're doing this year. I would say if Eberflus starts winning games, if the Bears win 4 out of the next 5, or maybe even 3 out of the next 5, I wouldn't be shocked if he stayed, but I think that he's probably I think he's going to be looking for probably new work. I would keep Fields, actually. I would keep Fields. I think, in my humble opinion, I think that NFL quarterbacks it's too complicated. I mean, there's plenty of first round. I mean, 6 weeks ago, before the Jaguars went crazy, everybody was like, Lawrence, not what we thought. Now they're in first place, best record in the AFC. So it's too much of a crapshoot. And the Bears have enough holes that if you can get if they're going to have 2 picks in the top 5, I guess it wouldn't drive me crazy if they drafted a quarterback, but I don't see anybody out there any better than Fields at the moment. So
no, I don't either. I think he needs weapons. I mean, if we've got 2 top 5, top 6 picks, and we can bring in a Marvin Harrison Jr. and you can bring in a D end to go a little sweat. I mean, all of a sudden you've got talent all over the field.
Well, I agree. That's exactly what I would do right there. I'd go Marvin Harrison and probably the best, either 3 technique interior lineman or defensive end outside linebacker that's in the draft. You're gonna get 2 of the best. You're gonna get 2 players at the best 2 players at their 2 positions in the draft that should start right away.
Yeah,
Harrison with DJ Moore.
I mean, to me, I can't even think of a better world than those 2 on the field together.
I mean, and I think the line needs help. I mean, we need to get some linemen in there, but we got other rounds we can do. You're not drafting a center in the top 5, but they need to do more there.
Yeah.
I think they've been better, but they can't stay healthy. Tevin Jenkins can't stay healthy. Cody Whitehair can't snap a shotgun snap. So I mean, they just have other holes, but I think you're starting to see Javon Dexter kind of play a little bit. He's starting to emerge. I think the sweat move was great.
I do too.
And I don't think Poles makes that move without Warren's blessing. I think that's a move for the future, right? Obviously, we don't care about this year.
Yeah.
But he's made a huge impact already, and you don't necessarily see it in the game, but it's in the stats. It's happening for sure.
He's a multiplier. He makes everything behind him better. Two offensive linemen have to pick him up. It makes everybody else's job to get to the quarterback. He's getting to the quarterback faster. It's making the linebacker and secondary's job easier. You can see it. You can just see it on the field how much more aggressive they are because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they won if they win Sunday in Detroit,
Yep, I won't either.
wouldn't surprise me.
Well, we had them beat 3 weeks ago. I mean,
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the Bears are what, 4-8, and they should have won 3 games. They should have beat Denver.
Yeah.
They should have beat Detroit. I guess 2 games. They should have beat Detroit.
But there was another one in there they had beat that we fumbled 2 times in a row. And
yeah,
is it Minnesota? Do we have Minnesota beat?
They had a chance to win the Minnesota game. Well, they did beat Minnesota.
But we have them again. I can't remember. Now I'm getting confused. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either.
Yeah,
if we finished 8-9, it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, and I think if he finishes 8, I mean, it just depends. I mean, I think it's going to be Kevin Warren's call. I mean, heck, we fired Lovey at 12-4, right, or 10-6. So,
yeah,
that was a long time ago. But I mean, we'd kill for that now. But, yeah, I mean, I think the Bears are trending up. They're pointing in the right direction. I don't know why you'd go to a rookie quarterback. I mean, Caleb Williams is, no offense to anybody, he's not even up for the Heisman now. He's not even a finalist. So, and maybe he drops. Maybe a guy like that drops, and you take Caleb Williams at 4 or 5, or if the Bears win a bunch more games, they end up at 7 or 8. I don't know. I mean, but I like what Fields can do. I mean, I think they just don't exactly call the best plays. But
can you explain the screens over and over to me? I mean, that's the part I don't understand.
Well, I listen to a lot of Chicago sports radio.
I do too.
And they have a lot of folk. They had a lot of folks on Monday or after, I guess it was Friday after that they played a Thursday night, I think, or Monday night, excuse me. And it was they did a lot of it to beat the pressure, the blitzing. I think it was Minnesota. They did a lot to. Flores does a lot of blitzing there in Minnesota. And something else I heard somebody say was, one of their pundits that they had on, was that Justin often checked out of a run to some of those screens, that was the pass call on some of the runs. So I don't know.
But I heard the same thing, but it's still all right. So why is he calling out of a run to throw only a screen? Can't we throw a slant? Can't we throw a deep ball? Can't we throw it out? Can't we move the ball down the field a little bit? I mean, the kid's got a big arm.
I know he's got a huge arm. I think that just goes back to the coaching. Yeah, I think when I watch, it's not a great example, but the Chiefs or even Detroit, Detroit, I mean, their receivers are running around. It's like flag football out there.
You never see that with the Bears. Never.
No, they're like, and this goes, I mean, like, since I've been a Bears, since I've known sports, as Bears receivers are always covered. There's no one ever open except the dudes in the flat, right? That there just isn't anybody to cover. But, yeah, I mean, I don't understand. I mean, he's a guy that he can throw any throw. We had the, whatever you want to call it, luxury or misfortune of him getting injured. Right. We got to see a little bit of Tyson Bagent, who, nice little guy. I mean, doesn't have, but I mean, you can see the arm talent is just totally different, but capable guy, can run your offense. But Justin Fields is, I mean, from a tool perspective, he has every tool you could possibly want.
Yeah.
And more.
Yeah. I'd like us to start thinking like Kansas City and Miami have done, saying, let's just bring in all the freak athletes we can bring in.
Yeah. I agree.
Let's out athlete some people for a while. Yep. See what that looks like. I'm all about character. I'm all about toughness and size, but give me some freak athletes and let's just see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's when you see that too. Darnell Mooney, I'm not sure he's fully healthy.
Yeah.
He's really recovered from his injury last year. I mean, at times he can kind of slip open, but he's not running away from anyone.
Nope.
And he's not strong. He's not big enough to really create space. Like, even, DJ Moore's not a big guy, but he's strong.
He is. Great hands.
And he knows what he's doing. And, Komet's had a nice year.
Yeah.
He picks up a few more touchdowns. I wouldn't be shocked if he, had a shot at a Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
He's had a really solid year, and he's a pretty good blocker. Does a lot there. So they've got parts. I mean, secondary when healthy isn't terrible.
No,
they're going to have to make a decision on Jalen Johnson, and you
and
know,
Eddie
see what
Jackson.
happens with Eddie Jackson, but
I like the young guys. I like the guys they brought in
yeah,
last year. I like Brisker.
yeah,
But it'll be interesting.
yeah.
It's Chicago sports, man. And then the Bulls are just I'm ready to I'm just ready to put the paper bag over my head.
Yeah, I mean, I think the scuttle the last couple of weeks, they've won 2 in a row, which is the first in a long time. And
Without their main man.
yeah, I think Levine, I think they're gonna trade him. Yeah.
Who wants him though? That's the question.
Oh, somebody that doesn't need him, like LA or
Right.
you know, like but I mean, yeah, he's not a multiplier. I mean, we talked about Montez Sweat. I mean, he's not, he just doesn't make people happy. I mean, I think there was a moment a year and a half, 2 years ago before he got the max deal where you're like, you know, this could work out. You put him with DeMar and
Yeah.
but it hasn't worked.
Yeah. I think teams that try and build a basketball program without a point guard, and I'm facing that right now. You
Yeah.
have an uphill battle when you don't have a true point guard to run your program, get you into the offense, be your lead man on defense. And when's the last time the Bulls had a lead point guard? Derrick Rose?
Yeah.
And even
And you could
was a
argue he was
scoring
more
guard.
than, yeah, he was, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd probably go back to say something like our old days, you know, Paxson, Armstrong. I mean,
Yeah.
like it's
DJ,
been a long time since they've had just a true distributor that can score a little bit, but that wasn't their primary job.
I think that position's so undervalued right now. The teams that have that guy are the ones that are shining. You know, the
Yeah.
ones
And
that you're struggling.
I think that's where probably pro basketball has sort of set back, you know, when you've got guys like LeBron and KD and, you know, just bringing the ball up.
Yeah.
You know, that concept of having a pure distributor, you know, like a Chris Paul,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I can't think of, I mean, Steph Curry's not really a point guard. He's just, you know, he's a shooter, he's a scorer.
Yeah. They run everything
like that role of somebody. I mean, like I see it even in like our basketball teams, our men's and women's teams at K. I mean, we really lacked just a you know, a court marshal that can just, you know, bring the ball up through any kind of traffic, never turn it over, always put the ball in the right place, smartest guy on the floor.
They're few and far between anymore. They're not out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's where teams are struggling. They're just struggling to find that guy that can do that and has that skill set. Yeah. Well, Coach Murphy, I love talking to you. It was great catching up. I enjoyed this a lot. I hope you got something out of it, but had a ton of fun and appreciate all you've done for me and looking forward to cheering for your girls in the upcoming season.
All right. Appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Give my best to your family.
All right. You too.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.